Let's go!
All right, welcome. Time to pull up a chair and talk some Dynasty football. This is the Ride or Dynasty podcast. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and tonight we talk about the deepest and most frustrating position group to rank, wide receivers. Now, I am joined tonight by Don Detweiler.
Hey, Riders, how we doing out there?
Eric Braun.
How's it going, guys?
And also joining us is the man responsible for the amazing series of team projection articles that you can find on RiderDynasty.com and also on Reddit. One of the newest members of the Rider family. You might know him as the trumpet god Tuba Deus, Alex Levin. Alex, tell the Riders about yourself.
Hey all, like JJ said, if you follow the Rider Dynasty articles or an avid browser of our fantasy football, you've probably seen my team projection series. That series more or less sums up my approach to fantasy football projections and rankings. I'm an engineer by trade, so I like numbers, usually focusing on how individual players fit into the coaching schemes.
Well, we are so excited for the work that you and the crew have been doing at the site. In the next couple of days, we have a Russell Gage article. We have a Ryan Tannehill article. Somebody built a roster out of only rookie deep sleepers. So we have a lot of stuff coming forward. So thank you guys for doing what you do. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe on whatever program you listen to your podcasts on. And give us a follow on Twitter at Ride or Dynasty. Now, before we get to our wide receiver rankings, let's check the news. All right, guys, Pat Mahomes signs a new contract, 10 years, worth up to $500 million. Alex, is any player worth that type of long-term investment?
It's 10 years is certainly a lot of time, but Mahomes has shown a lot of promise really early here. Maybe 10 years after, his first 2 years starting was a little bit aggressive. But being worth up to $500 million, $45 million per year for a quarterback in 10 years. This is very forward thinking. We're going to look back at this 10 years from now, and he's not even going to be on the top 10 list for highest paid quarterbacks. So from that perspective, if he stays playing at this level, he's great.
Yeah, I agree. 10 years from now, might not even crack the top 20. Eric, was it enough money though? Did Mahomes sign for too low of a deal?
I think he might have shortchanged himself a little bit, to be honest. Why not sign a 3-year deal or a 5-year deal that you typically see and dip back into the free agency or get another extension at the market value then, which I imagine is going to be even higher at that point. He'll still be in his prime, and the only real risk there is a serious injury. But if it seems like the Chiefs might be able to get out of this deal in that scenario after a few years anyways, so I don't really see how he helped himself all that much.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think he definitely could have gone for a shorter deal. On the Chiefs' end, it really looks like a 2-year extension with a 1-year deal after it. And then it gets very, very reasonable for them to get out of the deal in case of injury. But yeah, I would like to see a little bit more security for Mahomes moving forward. Now, also, Cleveland just renegotiated the contract of Olivier Vernon. Now, this puts an end to the Jadeveon Clowney to the Browns discussions. Don, is Clowney pricing himself out of the market or just waiting for a training camp injury?
It's probably a little bit of both. He's certainly approaching the point where he's going to price himself out of the deal here. And if he doesn't find a team relatively soon, there's just not going to be enough money left, because very shortly teams are going to start using their money and their remaining cap to re-sign players in their contract years on their own teams. So he better sort it out before so long. It seems like he's burned enough bridges along the way. Cleveland's out of the pool, and it seems like the Seahawks want no more to do with him. So, I mean, we'll see. There's got to be some kind of end game here for him.
Eric, you play a lot of IDP. What are you doing with Clowney if you have him on your team?
I mean, I think you just got to hold at this point. I generally have trouble selling most IDPs as is, let alone one that's not on a roster, and he still has a lot of upside. I think you're just best off waiting it out.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think, though, players who normally would sit out, skip all of training camp, and then sign a deal now have to think about the fact that they have to be quarantined for a certain number of days before they're going to be allowed to play. So you can't walk off the street and onto a football field anymore. So I hope his agents, I'm sure, are up to date with that, but better keep that in mind. Now, Eric, John
Yes,
Keim reports that there is not much optimism that Washington gets a deal done with franchise tagged Brandon Scherf. What are we thinking?
Well, I'm a little nervous. I think it's not too surprising, though, just between Washington kind of coming in with a new regime and wanting to make everybody basically prove themselves before they make a commitment. I think that's kind of the approach they're taking from the front office. And on the other hand, Scherf is looking at a big payday in the offseason and is going to want to at least test the market, I think. So I'm still optimistic a deal gets done, but I doubt it happens before the season.
Very good. All right. Well, that was the news. But before we get to our wide receiver rankings, let's check in with the Devy Dirtbag. Ryan?
Thanks, guys. Hey, Riders. Remember Jerry Jeudy? You know, back in early 2019, right after his Biletnikoff winning consensus first-team All-American, first-team All-SEC 2018 season, takes of Jeudy as the 2020 101 and non-Superflex rookie drafts were abound, and I was no different. Then, 2019 season happened. Jeudy appeared to take a bit of a step back compared to 2018, which, side note, he didn't. The touchdown numbers were due some regression, and so was his yards per reception rate. Where he improved was in yards per game and receptions. You know, those more concrete and projectable numbers crucial for fantasy. Anyway, it's actually arguable Jeudy got better. It's a much easier argument, however, to suggest he stayed the same, but what's not arguable to me is that he got worse. My point is that the fantasy community faded Jeudy in favor of one CeeDee Lamb, who kinda came out of nowhere to snag the crown as the top receiver in the class. It was rare at the time to find a pundit who even had Lamb as the wide receiver 2 or 3, except for me, of course. Lamb in 2019 put up a performance eerily similar to Jeudy's 2018. He posted 62 receptions for 1,327 yards, which is a clip of 21.4 per reception, and 14 touchdowns. For reference, Jeudy posted 68 receptions for 1,315 yards and 14 touchdowns in 2018. Lamb likely would have won the Biletnikoff Award himself had it not been for a surprise superstar by the name of Jamar Chase. And this Chase guy is so good. He's breaking receiving records left and right. He won the Biletnikoff. He's a first-team All-American, first-team All-SEC honoree. He's now a favorite for 101 and non-Superflex rookie drafts in 2021. Does this sound like anybody to you? Could it be Jerry Jeudy, perhaps? Alright, this is cool and all, but get on with it already. Right. Chase is due for a regression in the statistical department. That simple. Every one of his numbers from last year are unsustainable, except maybe catches, which he had 84 of. So what happens to Chase's fantasy outlook in the community when his regression happens? Especially where, meanwhile, there's this quickly rising star from the Big Ten who is building his very own Biletnikoff-worthy campaign, beating up on everyone he plays, getting better each and every week, gaining more and more national popularity. You know, people love shiny and new. And my question is, who will be 2020 CeeDee Lamb? For me, the answer is easy. It's Rashad Bateman Jr. from Minnesota. Bateman comes from a small town called Tifton, Georgia, home to just about 16,000 people. It was in Tifton that Bateman played for the Tift County Blue Devils, where he committed to play at Minnesota the summer before his senior season. As a senior, though, he broke out so big that the SEC was paying their full, undivided attention, and it wasn't long before they came knocking. Bateman's stats that year were 83 receptions for 1,539 yards and 21 touchdowns, and he made first-team All-State. And despite a strong push from numerous SEC teams to flip him, he stuck with his original commitment to play for PJ Fleck at Minnesota. All he has done since then is ball out. After breaking just about every freshman receiving record at Minnesota in 2018, Bateman made his presence felt in a much bigger way in 2019, putting up 60 receptions for 1,219 yards and 11 touchdowns, averaging 20.3 yards per reception, and winning Big Ten Receiver of the Year, first team All Big Ten honors, as well as being named third team All-American. While this isn't a player comp, watching Bateman on film is a little bit like watching a new and improved version of Corey Davis, who was a receiver formerly coached by Fleck at Western Michigan and went on to become a top 5 NFL draft pick. Now, say what you will about Davis's pro career, that dude was something special in college. And as I said, Bateman is even better. What do you want to see out of a receiver? Speed, route running, great hands, one-handed catches, catches in traffic, leaping ability, footwork off the line, run after catch ability, a willingness to block? The 6'2", 210-pound Bateman will do all of this and more. He really doesn't have a weakness to his game, which is scary, because this dude is a hard-working, explosive athlete who is only getting better. He's already a big play waiting to happen who beats his man on the majority of his routes, and after the catch he has the moves to evade tackles as well as the size and strength to run through defenders, which only enhances what he's able to do after the catch. If he gets behind the defense, goodbye, he'll see you in the end zone. In 2020, without Tyler Johnson eating up 86 receptions, Bateman is about to ball. He's the undisputed number 1 target for a really good quarterback with pro potential in Tanner Morgan. I'm saying 1,500 yards and winning the Biletnikoff isn't out of the question for Bateman. And did I mention he's an undeclared major? Oh yeah, you know what that means. He's entering the 2021 NFL Draft without question. So, if any player has the potential to overtake Jamar Chase as the wide receiver 1 in the class of 2021, much like CeeDee Lamb did to Jerry Jeudy in 2020, it's Rashad Bateman. I have a first-round grade on Bateman, and I think he has the talent to become a top 10 draft selection. He's a priority addition in Devy leagues, and now is the time to strike, because his value is only going to go up from here. And that'll do it for me here. You can find me on Twitter at the Devy Dirtbag. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next Devy Debrief. Now, back to the podcast.
All right, thanks, Ryan, for that update. Now, as always, before we start on our wide receiver rankings, our rankings are going to reflect a 3-year window, which we believe is the best way to build a dynasty squad. So, as Julie Andrews once said, let's start at the very beginning because that's a very good place to start. Tier 1, obviously, Michael Thomas, unanimous choice by all of us. He was able to produce both with Breeze and Teddy last year. Eric, does Michael Thomas belong in his own tier?
I think he does. The certainty's just insane. The consistency's been incredible. He was the clear wide receiver 1 last year. There's no question marks. He hasn't changed teams like DeAndre Hopkins. He hasn't, he doesn't have a team that's randomly drafting first-round quarterbacks with behind their Hall of Famer like Devontae Adams. Not to spoil the future rankings, but I think there's just a lot more stability there. You can't go wrong with Michael Thomas.
Don, your thoughts on Michael?
The dude's an absolute matchup nightmare, and where he's so effective is he'll catch passes in any of the different zones of the field. He's not limited to short or intermediate routes or just the long ball home run hitter. He just does it all, and with a Hall of Fame quarterback in Breeze and a balanced offense that looks to get him the ball, he's matchup proof.
Alex?
So he's undoubtedly the wide receiver 1. I have no argument there. The one warning I do have with him is that most of his fantasy value does come from sheer volume. His yards per reception numbers are actually pretty low. For the past 4 years, his entire career, looking at all the receivers who have logged over 100 targets each of those years, there's about 30 per year that hit that mark. He has never finished higher than 20th among those receivers in yards per reception. Now, that being said, he still does have an incredible catch percentage. He's obviously an incredible receiver. And his volume isn't going anywhere. I mean, his volume last year is probably not going to be repeated because he had basically no competition for targets. Even just adding Emmanuel Sanders this year will probably knock his targets down a peg. But, he's still going to hit 140, 150 targets a year easily. He still has an incredible catch percentage. He's still the wide receiver 1. Just don't go thinking, he's set a new standard. That's probably his ceiling that he just set last year.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think we've seen the best that we're going to see out of Michael Thomas. He's also getting older. So as long as you set your expectations properly, he's good as your number one receiver for the next 3 years. But, just understand that you have seen his peak. Now, he was in a tier unto himself. In our tier 2, we had a tie. So DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams tied. And as we like to do on Rider Dynasty, we like to break it. We like to break our ties by letting two of our guys tell me why their guys should be better. Don, you have 30 seconds or less. Why is Hopkins better than Adams this year?
Hopkins is going to be better than Adams this year because of the new offense and the new scheme and fit. You have a wide receiver now who's going to be happy in a new system. Even though there's going to be a reduction in total practice time, he and Kyler Murray are already throwing together. You have an offense that wants to put the ball in the air and wants to target Hopkins, particularly down the field. So he's going to see volume and he's going to see yardage to go with his reasonable and typical touchdown numbers. To me, he's just a better bet in a better and more friendly system than Adams.
Very good. 32 seconds. I appreciate punctuality. So I will take the other side with Devontae Adams. I don't think you can go wrong with either receiver, but in 2020, I still believe in Rodgers more as a pure passer than I do Kyler Murray. He throws fewer interceptions and isn't sacked as often. I think Adams will definitely be in a better position to outscore Hopkins this year. I participated. I cannot judge. So Alex gets to judge. So Alex, who do you think should be the number 2 and 3?
I'm going to just come out and say right away, as a Bears fan, I am very biased in this decision. But even beyond that, there's this narrative going around that receivers who switch teams take, some time to, their first year with their new team, they usually struggle. And I don't really buy into that narrative. Usually there's some other factor going on. Now, that being said, Hopkins does have the whole coronavirus pandemic. He doesn't have the offseason to really get used to his new team. So there is some question marks there. But like Don said, he's going to a new team that, if it's at all possible, might target him more than Deshaun Watson did with the Texans. And he's just, he's going to be peppered with targets. He's on a team that likes to feature wide receivers. It's just a great situation all around for him. And it's a team that runs plays really, really quickly. I believe they were one of the 5 fastest teams in the NFL last year. Their total play count didn't really show it because their defense was the worst in the NFL at getting off the field. But they put a lot of effort into that in this year's draft. If their defense improves at all, that play count goes up, even more pass attempts.
Well, I obviously didn't tell Alex the rule that I always win the contest that I'm a part of. So I guess DeAndre Hopkins is 2, Devontae Adams is 3. Now, sometimes in our rankings, especially with wide receivers, we find a player that falls right in between 2 tiers. At Rider Dynasty, we like to play a game called Tier Roulette and let our rankers decide. I'm going to spin a wheel, and whomever is chosen shall pick the tier a player belongs in. First up at number 4 is Tyreek Hill. He was unanimous as the number 4 pick. He's evenly spaced between D-Hop and Chris Godwin. So, I'll spin the wheel. Alex, which tier does he go into? Tier 2 or Tier 3?
He absolutely belongs in Tier 2. Keep in mind, last season, it was a little bit of a down season for him, but he also only played 12 games. And a lot of the games he did play, he was still injured in. Keep in mind, the year before, he had almost 1,500 yards. He had 12 touchdowns. This offense isn't any different. The only difference is he's healthy this year. He's absolutely one of the stud wide receivers you could possibly hope for. Maybe a little bit boom or bust, which not ideal for your wide receiver 1, but He's absolutely belongs in the same conversation as Hopkins and Adams.
Awesome. So let's just review our tier 1 and tier 2 receivers. Tier 1, we had Michael Thomas, of course. Tier 2 is DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, and Tyreek Hill. Starting off tier 3, at number 5, we have Chris Godwin. Don, what about Chris Godwin makes you like him more than Evans in that offense?
I love Godwin in this offense, in particular with the addition of Tom Brady to the offense now. We have a guy who is an absolute tactician at running these short to intermediate routes that Brady has just absolutely feasted on for his entire career. So we see now a young wide receiver who's already kind of burst onto the scene now get the gift that is Tom Brady throwing him the ball in a situation where he does exactly what Brady loves. So I definitely see Godwin outpacing Evans this year simply because, A, I don't know that Brady's got the arm to go down the field as consistently to Evans, and Evans is already a boom or bust player. So I like Godwin here substantially more.
Well, you referred to Tom Brady as a gift, something that only Tom Brady refers to himself as. Now, at number 6, we have Mike Evans. Eric, you had them ranked opposite. Why do you think Evans will be more successful with Tom Brady in town?
I did. Well, for one, Evans has just been consistently more productive throughout his career. He's a little bit older, but he has a much more proven track record of success. Godwin had 1,300 yards last season, but it was really the first time he ever performed at that level, and Mike Evans was still a wide receiver 1. And on top of that, while it's true that Godwin fits well with Brady in that underneath kind of style of receiver that we've seen, maybe not, Welker and Edelman exactly, but kind of that shifty route runner aspect, whereas Evans is a larger outside target. Mike Evans actually compares better to Tom Brady's best 2 ever weapons in Rob Gronkowski and Randy Moss, who were both very vertical, large jump ball receivers, even if Gronk was a tight end.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually love this tier right now. I don't think you can go wrong in this tier. Number 7, following Godwin and Evans, is DJ Moore. Alex, now you are projecting that Carolina is going to run the ball more this year, which obviously means they're going to pass less. Are you concerned at all about DJ Moore's target share?
Yes and no. So obviously, like you said, I'm projecting a much more run-heavy offense, and Matt Rule, historically at his Baylor stop as head coach of Baylor and head coach of Temple, his offense was very slow. So last season, the Panthers were 5th in total plays. They were third. They had the 3rd highest pass rate, which came out to be the 2nd most pass attempts in the league. That's all coming way down this year. The difference, though, and the one positive thing that could save DJ Moore's fantasy value, is that both Matt Rule and offensive coordinator Joe Brady come from spread systems, which you can tell the Panthers are heading in that direction by the fact that they signed literally any wide receiver with a pulse this offseason. So they're going to really feature their wide receivers when they do throw. So even though the overall passing volume might go down, if the wide receiver target share stays up, and DJ Moore in particular being the far and away wide receiver 1 of that team, his actual target share, his percentage should go up enough that it could easily offset almost everything that the team loses in the passing game.
Yeah, I like to hear that. We're big fans of DJ Moore on this podcast, so we're looking forward to see what happens with Joe Brady and Matt Rule in town. Now at number 8, we have Julio Jones. Now I know the knock on Julio is that he's old. Eric, serious question: if Julio was 26, where do you rank him?
If Julio's 26, with everything we know about him, I'd put him above Michael Thomas. I mean, I don't think there's any question. I think Julio Jones is on another level from almost every wide receiver in the NFL. Certainly, he's in that top tier with Thomas. But unfortunately, he's not 26. He is in his 30s now. But still, I mean, you just can't go wrong. The only thing that scares me is if you lose a season. Everybody, wear your masks and all, but if you lose a season, he takes a much bigger value hit than some of these younger guys do.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm if you want a season, wear a mask. We say it all the time. If you want football, wear a mask. But yeah, I worry about him getting older, but he is still phenomenal. It's one of those players that you don't know if you'll ever see somebody like him again. Gotta love Julio Jones. Now, next up on our tier roulette is Juju Smith-Schuster, the mercurial wide receiver from the Steelers. So he is ranked right in between tier 3 and tier 4. I'm going to spin the wheel. Well, it's me. All right. So, Juju Smith-Schuster. Yeah, I have him ranked above the players in tier 4. And I actually have him above Mike Evans and Julio Jones in tier 3. So clearly, for me, Juju Smith-Schuster is a tier 3 wide receiver. I think with Big Ben coming back, his promise is going to be once again shown after a down year last year. So to review, our tier 3 wide receivers are Chris Godwin at 5, Mike Evans and DJ Moore at 6 and 7, Julio Jones, and then Juju Smith-Schuster at number 9. Now, to start off our tier 4, we have our first disparity debate of the evening. Now, our disparity debates happen when two of our rankers are very far apart on their rankings of an individual player. So, Kenny Golladay is our consensus number 10. However, Eric is a little bit off on his ranking. So the disparity debate is between Eric and myself. I have Kenny Golladay at number 8. Eric has him at 18. I'll let Eric go first.
All right. So I have to admit, I think we're getting into that range of wide receivers where there are so many great options that you really struggle. And there's less of a gap between putting somebody at wide receiver 12 and wide receiver 20 or so than it may seem. I don't hate Kenny Golladay at all. That being said, he did play in a top 10 passing offense last season, had a very good season, 1,190 yards, 11 touchdowns, very good numbers, but not what I would consider elite numbers. Probably is going to be looking at some touchdown regression there coming into the next couple seasons. I also thought it was interesting how much his stat line compared to Marvin Jones's figures from 2017 when Marvin Jones had 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns in what was basically the same offense. I think they're actually very similar players, both great jump ball receivers, both really good players who maybe don't get enough love from the NFL public, but not guys who are all pro caliber receivers. They're not your Julio Joneses, your Michael Thomases. He was 15th in yards per game last season, which is good but not great. And I think that's ultimately where I struggle with him, is that he's a little bit older for having only played 3 seasons in the league. He's 26, and he's just not an elite option. He's a very good option, which isn't a bad thing. It's just not top 15 dynasty wide receiver material.
All right, Kenny Golladay is a great player in a great situation. Last year, he finished as wide receiver 9, which is one spot above where we have him, Eric, 10. Despite his QB missing 8 games. Eric, you said those numbers. He didn't have Matt Stafford for 8 games. He was on pace for 70 catches, 1,300 yards, and 14 TDs when Stafford got hurt. Plus, he is one of only 2 players with 50 or more catches and averaged over 18 yards per reception. This is the year he achieves those numbers. This is the year he breaks out. He is a definite wide receiver 1 for this year and going forward with Matthew Stafford. Don, I'll let you decide.
Yeah, as long as Matt Stafford's there and healthy, Golladay is definitely in the 10 or better range. If you extrapolate his numbers for a full season with Stafford, he blows away the competition. I love him. So, JJ, you win.
All right, coming in at number 11 is Amari Cooper. Alex, do you consider Amari Cooper to be a wide receiver 1 in redraft leagues?
In redraft leagues, Probably very borderline. He does have his tendency to always show up for 4 games of the season and just kind of exist the other 12. But speaking in general, I think the big knock against him is that people are afraid with Dallas having drafted CeeDee Lamb that's going to cut into Amari Cooper's targets. I actually could easily see Cooper increasing his target share this year because even with CeeDee Lamb coming in, you have to remember that the Cowboys lost Jason Witten. They lost Randall Cobb. That frees up 166 targets just between those two players. And this is the exact same offense as they ran last year. So if you have all these targets suddenly flooding the team, Blake Jarwin last year still had 40-something targets of his own, so it's not like he's suddenly going to pick up all 83 that Jason Witten left behind. There's probably about 100 targets up for grabs there. So yeah, Lamb will come in and grab a good chunk of those, but Cooper could come in and grab even more. If anything, he might actually be consistent this year since there's fewer, basically all the targets are consolidated. There's fewer people trying to compete for them.
Yeah, one of my big knocks over the years was his consistency and the fact that, you would get 3 or 4 good weeks out of him where he was like all world and the rest he was just average. And it really could kill you in a lot of weeks.
Sorry. And one more thing, just so that's the thing for redraft. For dynasty purposes, actually, there's some question marks down the line, specifically after the 2021 season. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is very highly thought of. Was considered the best pure talent prospect in this draft. And he's still going to be in the middle of his rookie contract after the 2021 season. However, Michael Gallup, his rookie contract ends after 2021. Amari Cooper's mega deal, there's an out after 2021. With the way Dallas is heading right now, with how much they're just throwing money at their players, I don't think they can keep both. I don't think they can keep Cooper on his current deal and pay Gallup a deal after his rookie contract. One of them is going to be leaving after the 2021 season. That does throw some question marks into Amari Cooper's future. So for redraft this year, Cooper should be fine. Heading into next year, it's a little bit questionable depending on how much CeeDee Lamb takes to the NFL. After 2021, there's a real question mark of where Cooper ends up.
All right. So now we come to number 12, which is A.J. Brown, who again is stranded between Amari Cooper and Courtland Sutton. So let's spin the wheel. Eric, tell me in which tier to put A.J. Brown.
I'm bumping him up to tier 4. I was just arguing against Kenny Galladay. A.J. Brown's one of the guys I was putting above Galladay. I actually have him above Cooper as well. A.J. Brown was an absolute monster last season. The Titans only threw 448 times last season, which is 31st in the NFL, and he still put up 1,050 yards and 8 touchdowns as a rookie, which is just crazy. And he's 3.5 years younger than somebody like Kenny Galladay. I think A.J. Brown is somebody who has genuine wide receiver 1 superstar potential, and situations change fast.
Don, you have Kenny Galladay. Somebody offers you A.J. Brown for him straight up. Do you make the trade?
No, I don't at this point. The fit is just too good for Galladay in a situation where they're going to throw much more commonly in Detroit than what you can expect to see out of Tennessee and that offense that is predicated on putting the ball on the ground early, often, and as much as possible. So I just see the volume and the benefit there of having Galladay in the Detroit system.
What would you need on top of A.J. Brown to give up Galladay? A third? A second?
A second would probably make it happen for me. A third, I'd contemplate it, but I'd hold out for the second.
I'm not gonna lie, you're gonna call me crazy. I think I'd need Galladay and a first to move Brown. I'd much rather have Brown.
Well, you can tell by the silence that everybody's pretty much gobsmacked.
Everybody's checking their roster to see if they own A.J. Brown anywhere and can sell him to me.
Yeah, because I would trade him to you in a second for that.
Yeah, no doubt.
I have found your weak link, young man. besides Saquon and Odell. But
That's okay. I've already got them everywhere.
All right, so let's review our tier 4. I can't even believe you just said that. At number 10, we have Kenny Galladay because we are rational and sentient human beings. At 11, we had Amari Cooper. And Eric put A.J. Brown in tier 4 with them. All right, tier 5. Tier 5 starts at number 13. So our first of our QB2s with Cortland Sutton. Now, Alex, Sutton had 124 targets last year. Is he going to have the same level of opportunity with Judy and Hamler and lock safety blanket Albert O on the team?
So I think what the critical thing we have to keep in mind is that with the pandemic kind of preventing off-season work, all rookies need to have a major downgrade this year. I don't care how good they are not going to come in and like step into starting roles and immediately be effective. It's going to take more time for them to get rolling. That means Judy has to be downgraded. Hamler has to be downgraded. Albert O probably isn't even going to be the starter behind Noah Fant. So with that in mind, last year, the Broncos only ran 950 plays. And their pass rate, I believe, was somewhere around 57%. Pat Schumer, the new offensive coordinator, he's been a little all over the place depending on what players he had. But for the most part, he is very pass happy. 3 of his last 4 years coaching, his teams have thrown over 60% of the time. And it's pretty likely that the Broncos are going to step up from, the 950 pass attempt or 950 plays they ran last year to closer to 1,000. So higher pass rate, more plays, and Sutton, at least to start the season, is going to dominate those looks because he's the only one who has any sort of rapport with Drew Lock. So yeah, I think he should be great going forward.
Yeah, that's interesting. And of course, we all saw Denver make that decision to move away from being the defensive orientated team to an offensive juggernaut to compete with Kansas City. Now, with all that you said, Eric, should we be expecting Deshaun Hamilton of Penn State University to get like 110 targets this year?
Oh, no doubt. We are. There we go.
Penn State. I wanted to give you a layup for your guy, but
thanks, man.
Yeah, he's kind of a bust.
Look,
he's
you
kind
know
of
what?
a bust. Don't give me a look.
Give him time.
You just said that AJ Brown you would trade for Kenny Galladay in a first. Don't give me a look. You're used to takes.
Only the best.
Deshaun Hamilton's a bust. Anyway, I'm sure he's a good locker room guy, like Sandusky. Anyway,
wow.
Penn State joke. What? All right, coming in at number 14 is Terry McLaurin. Of course, Eric, I'm going to stick with you. You know how I feel about Terry. I'm a huge fan. I think he is the next big Ohio State receiver, which is wide receiver U. He had 93 targets last season, which is about a 19% share. Do you think, Eric, that he's going to approach 25% if healthy for all 16 games?
I do. I think he's going to have an even better season this year. He actually weirdly took a bit of a step back, not through his own fault, but he took a bit of a step back when Haskins took over for Case Keenum last season. I think he just hadn't worked they hadn't worked together as much, even though they both went to Ohio State, but McLaurin wasn't as productive there. Anyways, Haskins ended up missing him on a few big plays last season. I think there's a lot of room for growth. All the reports from the offseason this year have been really promising. There aren't a ton of other weapons there. He's going to get peppered with targets. The only concern is just that offense might not be able to sustain anybody getting to wide receiver 1 production, but I agree with you. McLaurin has legit superstar potential.
Now, Don, how much do you see Jeremy Sprinkle eating into McLaurin's targets?
He won't.
Sorry, that was another Rider Dynasty joke.
Hail Henkes.
All right, inside joke. All right, so next up at 15 is another one of our disparity debates. This time, it doesn't involve me, which are the ones I love. Cooper Kupp comes in at number 15. Now, Don has him ranked at 15, and Eric has him ranked at 27 overall. Wow. Don, you go first. Tell me about Cooper Kupp.
All right. Let's start with fun to say Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is a volume-based receiver. The guy gets the majority of his points based on total catches and yard after catch potential here. Things have changed in LA a bit. Kupp is what's left that's going to get a high volume of targets. He's got him and Wood, and I really see Kupp getting the lion's share of the targets in offensive genius Sean McVay's system here. They're going to go and do everything they possibly can to get Kupp opportunities to get even more catches than they have in the past. And as they lean on the running game, that should open up the intermediate area where Kupp is just super dangerous. So I see Kupp maintaining his previous production, if not improving.
Eric?
So I think you're right. Kupp is a volume-based receiver. What scares me is that I don't know that volume's really going to be there. So over the first half of the season last year, Goff and the Rams were struggling at times. The Rams historically had run a lot of 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers on the field, and Kupp was always in the slot. And then as the season went on, they switched heavily into 12 personnel with an extra tight end on the field. Kupp got squeezed out a bit. That was when Tyler Higbee just caught fire for the rest of the season. And Kupp really took a hit. He actually had more than twice as many yards in the first 8 games of last season as he did in the second half. And I don't know that situation's really going to change. And I don't think he's the sort of player who's going to demand targets. He's not the guy you design an offense around. It's just going to be a matter of, does Sean McVay want to run the personnel groups that get Kupp on the field?
Excuse me, who?
You didn't say it.
Offensive genius Sean McVay. My apologies. But I mean, I think Kupp may have some minor risk about how much he's on the field. And on top of that, the Rams just spent a second-round pick on a guy who a lot of people think is very similar to Cooper Kupp in Van Jefferson. Kupp's contract's up after this year. He's 27 already. I think there's a little bit of risk that he just kind of fades out into mid-level receiver for the rest of his career.
I can't disagree with what you said, Eric. He is old. They did bring in Van Jefferson, though. I don't think Van Jefferson is anything that any receiver needs to worry about. I can't move him as low as you said, but I might bump him down a little bit from where Don has him. So I guess I have to give it to you, Eric, because you did move me down a little bit.
There we go.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Next up at number 16. Now, I feel bad because I'm going to go right back to Alex. CeeDee Lamb. With new head coach Mike McCarthy in Dallas, what is a reasonable target share for the 3 wide receivers? So we talked before about Amari, Gallup, and now Lamb.
So, like I said before, I think there's plenty of space. I don't think with any new regime there's going to be there's plenty of targets for Lamb to just come in and not have to eat into Cooper's production or Gallup's production. And beyond that, even with Mike McCarthy coming in, McCarthy has already come out and specifically said that Kellen Moore will be running Kellen Moore's offense. Moore will be calling the plays. Maybe McCarthy will, throw some elements in there of his offense, but for the most part, this offense is staying unchanged. So with that being said, Randall Cobb had 83 targets last year. I don't think that's an unreasonable projection for Lamb. I mean, if he's truly as talented as he's hyped up to be, and if he can make the jump to the NFL despite, not really having much in the way of preseason work for his rookie season, 83 targets and 50 some odd catches probably is not an unreasonable projection.
Now we're coming back after CD to number 17, which is going to be a debate. The player is Odell Beckham Jr. Now, Eric has a weird affinity for Odell Beckham Jr. and has him ranked at number 7. Only one of us to have him in the top 10. Don has him at 21. So this is kind of the opposite of a Cooper Kupp, except a little bit weirder. Eric, I'm going to make you wait I want to hear what Don has to say in 30 seconds or less
Fair enough.
about OBJ. Don?
All right, here we go. OBJ and the lack of fit in what Cleveland has tried to do as an offense with him. It's just square peg and round hole. OBJ has been super dynamic throughout his career, at least when he was with the Giants. But now you put him on a Cleveland offense with Baker Mayfield, who's trying to find his way, an offensive line that is ragtag at best, even though they flung all the money at Ty Conklin and expect him to all of a sudden turn into a great pass blocker, which he never really has been, and draft a tackle for the right side and said, good news, you're a left tackle now. It's like the most Cleveland story ever. The big thing here, though, is just a total lack of fit and personal mesh. I actually like Landry a little better than I like ODB, and I have him ranked as low as I do simply because I just don't see the fit with him in the offense.
Eric, tell me why OBJ is going to be your OBJ.
So I've got to be honest. I don't think I can keep this to 30 seconds. This has me fired up. This
Go
is
ahead.
borderline criminal. This is borderline criminal because it's not just Don. It's across the board, the Ryder Dynasty rankers. I'm the only one who has him in the top 15. I have him at 7, and I'm closer to moving him up than I am to moving him down. Odell Beckham is just an absurdly talented receiver, and I think people have forgotten how good he actually is. As a rookie, he led the league in yards per game. He would have had 1,700 yards and 16 touchdowns if he hadn't started the season banged up with a hamstring injury. His last season playing alongside the corpse of Eli Manning, he was on a 1,400-yard, 8-touchdown pace before a quad injury. You may be sensing a theme. Last season, he had 1,000 yards in a terrible situation with Freddie Kitchens. I can't emphasize enough how badly designed that offense was. He was playing through injury, still had 1,000 yards. Baker Mayfield, again, took a big step back because of the offense. Coming into this season, he's got the potential to have the best quarterback play of his career. Eli Manning wasn't really even that good when Odell was first drafted. Eli Manning's splits in his career, once Odell Beckham joined the Giants, when Odell is on the field compared to off, are jarringly different. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I think it's a 91 passer rating compared to a 75 passer rating when Odell sits. Eli was basically useless without Odell on the field. And might add that Odell Beckham is third all-time in yards per game, behind only Julio Jones and Michael Thomas. Now, granted, that list skews towards more modern-day receivers as the league has gotten more pass-happy, but he's ahead of Calvin Johnson. He's ahead of Antonio Brown. Odell Beckham Jr. is not some, pretty good receiver who's just in a tough situation. There's no square peg in a round hole. Odell Beckham Jr. is a genuinely elite receiver. He's like Julio Jones. He's like Michael Thomas. Just throw him the freaking ball. I think finally, without Freddie Kitchens in the room and a half-decent quarterback, he's going to get 130 targets, and he's going to put up his consistently great numbers. Alex?
So I tend to fall a little bit closer to Eric here. I know I don't think I actually provided any rankings for the Dynasty rankings, but I don't know if I would have him all the way at number 7, but I do agree that it's criminal to have him outside of the wide receiver 1 territory. It's just there's so much recency bias going into that. I mean, he was considered an elite fantasy receiver for years. He was one of per game production, one of the best in the league for years. And now he plays one season hobbled by a core injury in a terrible offensive scheme, and now he's some low-end wide receiver too. It makes no sense to me. Now, I do admit he does have an injury problem, clearly, which means there is a high risk you will not have him for an entire season. And the new offense in Cleveland, Stefanski was just the offensive coordinator for the Vikings. So he ran that offense, and it was a very run-heavy offense. They barely threw. And now he's the head coach of the Browns. So there is some risk that even if the offense is better designed, the volume might not be there. And like I said, injuries. But overall, this is one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. You can't have him somewhere as a low-end wide receiver too.
So what interests me as the judge of this is that I kept hearing a theme of he would have, he was on a pace for, he was hobbled by. When you hear the same story year after year, if somebody tells you who they are, you should listen. I think OBJ can get to wide receiver 7 if he gets 150 targets. I don't think he's getting 150 targets like he used to. I mean, Eric, you said that Eli was useless without Odell. Odell has proved pretty useless without Eli. So I have to see Eli prove that I have to see OBJ prove that he can do it on a reduced target load before I believe that he's going to see those numbers again.
Oh, killing me.
I'm good. Now, granted, I've been taking him earlier than 17. So again, I am moving him up from there, but I can't give this one to you. I'm going with Don.
Woo!
Now,
I'm hurt.
this is getting late. This is going long, so we're going to do this pretty quickly. We have a tie here between Jerry Jeudy and Keenan Allen. I'm tired of hearing Don and Eric talk against each other. You have 15 seconds. Don, tell me why Jerry Jeudy is better than Keenan Allen. Go.
Judy's better than Allen in this case because of the new build and the new offensive system. They want to throw the ball all over the yard, and you're putting a wide receiver who's a route tactician into a system that already has a deep threat in Sutton, a speed guy in KJ Hamler, and now you've got your tactician and route runner. This guy has upside like Godwin in Tampa.
All right, Eric, Keenan Allen is better than Jerry Jeudy. Why?
I can keep this quick. Keenan Allen is what we hope Jerry Jeudy someday will be.
Whoa!
That's it.
Keenan Allen wins. That was pretty succinctly put. I don't know if I agree with you, but that was a good argument. All right, at number 20, we have Stephon Diggs. Now, Don, the Bills don't have many vacated targets this year. Allen isn't the type of QB to support multiple receiving options. Diggs has averaged 107 targets per year with the Vikings. If I put the line at 107, over or under on the number of targets Diggs gets in Buffalo.
I've taken the under, but not by a whole lot. I have him right around 100 targets, and almost all of those targets are of the as far as Allen can throw the ball variety.
Eric, over under 107 on targets.
I'm taking the over as well. I think he's comfortably the best receiver in that room, and Allen's going to pepper him.
Okay, Don took the under, so you're taking the over?
Yeah, just
Not
got it.
over as well when you disagree. Just teaching you basic English there, brother. Alex, over or under?
I'd be slamming the over on that. The last year, I believe both John Brown and Cole Beasley each had 100, 110 targets. Diggs is clearly better than both of them. It's not even close. So, yeah, there's not a ton of vacated targets, but he's going to steal targets from both of them. To me, it's almost a given. I think I have it projected for about 120, maybe 125 targets minimum. And that's assuming that Beasley and Brown still, maintain some level of target share themselves.
All right. Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think he definitely gets over 107. I mean, he walks in hands down the best receiving option on that team. Now, Allen Robinson, we have at 21. Alex took one look at our rankings and immediately asked me if he could speak about this horrible ranking we have. So I kind of laughed because it was the first thing he said coming on his first podcast. Go ahead, Alex. Tell me why we're wrong.
So I will preface it by once again reminding you that, I do have my bear goggles.
Oh, that's right.
But even, that the bear goggles are why I'm fired up about Robinson as opposed to just, generically saying, he's underrated. This is a guy who is coming off the season as the wide receiver 8 in PPR. That was with Trubisky throwing him the ball in the Bears offense, which was one of the worst in the NFL last year. They had nothing going for them. He was still the wide receiver 8. Now, I don't know how he can possibly be ranked as a low-end wide receiver too. Like he's going to be 27 this year. In redraft, he's almost locked in for a borderline wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 season. In Dynasty, he's got 3 more years of being at least 3 more years of being wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 seasons. If it turns out the Bears don't re-sign him after this season, he goes somewhere else and probably commands a ton of money and goes to be their wide receiver 1. No matter where he goes, he's going to be peppered with targets. He's going to be treated as that wide receiver 1. Putting him as a low-end wide receiver 2 in fantasy is just a travesty to me.
Well, if there's one thing we're known for, it is travesties. Eric, do you agree with Alex? Because, of course, we are.
Absolutely. I was going to say, it's a Penn State guy. Stud.
But you only have him at 17.
Well, maybe I'll bump him up. I've got him ahead of Kenny Galladay.
You shut your mouth. All right. Now, at 22, which is the end of our tier, what are we at? Tier 4? Tier 5? Tier 5 wide receivers. We have DK Metcalf. Now, I'm going to take this one. I keep asking everybody else about him, but I want to say something first. I think DK is going to be in this range of receivers for the rest of his career. I don't think he's ever going to be a wide receiver 1. I think he is a great wide receiver 2 and a great complement to a player like Tyler Lockett. Kind of like a nondescript wide receiver 1, somebody like a Stephon Diggs. You put DK next to him, I think you're going to see these same results. Now, Eric, do you think that DK will ever be a true number 1 receiver in the NFL?
I think he can be. Do
you think he will be? Not can. Will be.
No, probably not. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think the upside is just so high that I'm willing to gamble. But gun to my head, does he make that jump? No.
Don?
No, I don't have him there either, and part of the reason why is because of him being in Seattle, playing with a quarterback who likes to spread the ball around in a system that emphasizes the run just as much as they emphasize the pass.
Alex?
If we're talking about the rest of his career beyond just the immediate future with Seattle, yes, I think he can make it. He had 100 targets as a rookie, 58 catches, 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. For a rookie, that is spectacular production. He almost matched A.J. Brown, and A.J. Brown was literally putting up historic rookie numbers. Looking somewhere down the line, I think you could very well see him doing that.
All right. Well, guys, this is going pretty long, so I'm going to cut it off here. We actually have our top 36, but we're going to finish up the last 14 on the next podcast, as well as touch on our tight end rankings, which nobody really cares too much about except me. So we're going to be back next week. Tags, guys, give me your last words and handles. Don.
You can find me nowhere because I don't believe in the social media. But again, these are our rankings. You do you. It's your team. Enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sit down, take the ADP, and make your own rankings out of it. Eric?
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at Eric Braunmower. And if you take one thing away from this episode, buy Odell Beckham.
And trade Kenny Galladay. Alex?
You can find me on Twitter at Tubideus, although more likely you'll find me on Reddit with that same tag. And my actual rankings will be coming out soonish, now that I finish my team projections.
Yeah, once again, if you haven't checked out Alex's articles on team projections, they're very short and to the point and accurate. He breaks down everything you need to know in order to make your own projections. So you can make your own rankings from a place of reason, which is someplace that Eric does not live.
Ouch.
I love you, Eric. You know that. All right. So I'm at JJ Wenner. So from all of us to all of you, be safe, be well, be healthy. And as always, boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.